The Chicago Cubs punched their postseason ticket today. Are we overlooking them?
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Go to 5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called these days on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But the best way to get a hold of me is right here on the YouTube page. And make sure when you do post a comment here, go use that hashtag everyday Sully. It helps us find your comments. And there you go. And we got a lot of people talking to me about the MVP race. And it's funny. There's some people who are talking as if that I'm crazy for saying that I'd vote for Aaron Judge. And there's some people that I'm crazy for saying that I think Cal Raleigh deserves a good long look. And both sides think I'm crazy. So therefore, I know I'm saying something worthwhile. And I'll be addressing some of those comments. I think it's just going to be basically, it's going to come down for these last few days. Now, the Mariners lost today and the Astros won. And we're going to see those two teams leapfrogging probably in first place for the rest of the year. And the Yankees wound up doubling up Minnesota. Minnesota's hung tough the last couple of games, but in the end, the Yankees were just a little bit better and dusted themselves off in the first game. But the big game, first of all, let's go. Let's do the trivia question first. I was getting ahead of myself. We talked about Robert Redford the other day. And by the way, I failed to mention that when I started to talk about it, then as sometimes happens, my brain moves faster than my mouth. When I started doing this podcast, I wrote down the list of my all-time fantasy guests that I would have. And one of them was Bob Uecker. That was one of my fantasies. Never got to have him on. But one of them was Robert Redford. I'm a huge Robert Redford fan. And he was one of my two or three absolute could ask a genie for to have on the show. And he was a huge baseball fan, a rabid baseball fan, a big Boston Red Sox fan, as I mentioned the other day. And obviously his love for baseball spearheaded The Natural, which was a film nobody wanted to make, and turned into a very successful movie and relaunched the baseball genre. And I got a couple people, we'll address some of the Robert Redford responses in an upcoming show. But the movie question I asked was, what baseball movie was nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards and featured speaking roles by two members of the Baseball Hall of Fame? My friend Marcel, known as Cubs fan with an 1908, says, was it Damn Yankees? Nope, wasn't Damn Yankees. They may have had a couple of Hall of Famers in it, but the film was not nominated for Best Picture. Not a bad guess, though. Let's see. Muskie Wrestler gave a really good guess, which was Little Big League, which is a film that had a lot of cameos by people, including Randy Johnson and Ken Griffey Jr., who are members of the Baseball Hall of Fame, and Lou Piniella, who should be in the Hall of Fame. That is a phenomenal guess, Muskie Wrestler, and not true, not the right answer, because that film was not a Best Picture nominee. Stephen Colatrella said Pride, F the Yankees. I assume he's not talking about the lovely British film Pride that came out around 2020 or so, but is actually talking about Pride of the Yankees. Not saying Pride and F the Yankees. I don't think Stephen would do that. Stephen does not have a potty mouth. Pride of the Yankees is the correct answer. Pride of the Yankees, which was a very successful movie with Gary Cooper and as Lou Gehrig. And it featured Babe Ruth as himself. And Babe Ruth is great. He's terrific in the movie. Now, he's playing himself. It's not like they're asking him to play Macbeth. But some people can't play themselves well. If you don't believe me, well, just watch Bill Dickey. Bill Dickey, Hall of Fame catcher, is also in the film playing himself. Not a good actor. Great catcher, not a good actor. So that is the answer. Pride of the Yankees was a Best Picture nominee, starring Gary Cooper, who, by the way, full disclosure, huge movie star, Academy Award winning movie star. Not a big fan. Not a big fan. I think Gary Cooper's kind of boring. And it's not because he's an old time actor, because I love old classic movies. I love Clark Gable. I love Humphrey Bogart. I love James Cagney. I love James Cagney, James Stewart, Frederick March, Cary Grant, all those great stars from that era, Laurence Olivier. I love all those big stars. And I think Gary Cooper's dull. Then again, I also think Richard Gere is dull. Sometimes famous, successful people are dullards like me. But hey, let's go talk about one of the big things that happened today in baseball, and that is the Chicago Cubs played the Pittsburgh Pirates today. And along the way, the Pirates balked in a run early, and there was a back and forth game. But in the end, the Cubs wound up winning the game 8-4. And with that, in front of a very, very sparse crowd at PNC Park, a park I have to go to eventually, the Chicago Cubs clinched a spot in this year's postseason. And this has been a long time coming. The Cubs' last postseason appearance was in the COVID year, and they were quickly dispatched. How about, I'm going to say something I bet you forgot. They were eliminated in the COVID year in front of cardboard cutouts, including one of my friend Brody Stevens, and that weird year that we had, and they were eliminated. Do you remember who eliminated them? I'm sure some of you do. The Marlins. That's right, the Marlins, as led by Don Mattingly, eliminated the Cubs in Wrigley Field. And at the time, the Marlins had never lost a postseason series, and they went to Chicago and once again punched Cub fans in the mouth like they did in 2003. Now, the Marlins wound up getting their clocks cleaned by Atlanta in the division series, but that's not the point. The Cubs have not been in the postseason since then, and prior to that, it had been since the 2018 wild card game, which was one of the great. You remember they did that, the one-game wild card game? I thought that was pretty cool. I kind of miss it, where they lost in extra innings to the Colorado Rockies. The last two teams to eliminate the Cubs in the postseason were the Rockies and the Marlins. And it has been huge, huge piles of disappointment for Cub fans in 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024, where several of those years, including last year, they were contending right to the very end. Remember, they were a wild card contender right to the very end in 2023, and they came up short. And what happened to the team that got in their spot? That was Arizona, who went on to the World Series. And the Cubs have been a little bit of a feathered fish. They've spent on some players, but not gone on big for some of the other free agents that have been floating around over the last bunch of years. Not in on Bryce Harper, not in on Manny Machado, not in on Aaron Judge, not in on Shohei Ohtani. I'm not in on Yamamoto. I'm sure they gave lip service to them, but they didn't wind up landing any of them. And I know a lot of Cub fans are going, hey, aren't we the Cubs? Aren't we a big market team? Now, they're in all likelihood not going to win the division. The Milwaukee Brewers just are really, really good, as I mentioned. And they're a team that's doing just about everything right. And the idea of the Cubbies, I believe, did the Brewers win today? Yeah, the Brewers clobbered the Angels. And by the way, I'm going to do a little thing on the Angels pretty soon, because we need to talk about the Angels and what an embarrassment they've become. So right now, Milwaukee still has a 5-game lead with like 10, 11 games left to play. The chances of the Cubs catching them are next to nothing. But the Cubs have won 88 games. They've won more games than the Dodgers. They will have a spot. Right now they're ahead of the Padres. They're ahead of the Mets. They would be hosting the wild card series. And they've not been getting, for a high-profile team, they've not been getting the respect or the attention that you would think. And in a way, that may be in the Cubs' advantage, because they're laying in the weeds. Nobody's really talking about them, and they could be dangerous this October. All right, let's hear from our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. That's 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. I think Clint Eastwood directed that. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. And I always reach for my favorite flavor, because you know what? I love anything with a lime taste in it. And it's refreshing. It gives me that quick lift before that busy day. And I love how fast it kicks in, especially on those days at school where I need that little bit of a boost. It's sugar-free, so I don't have to worry about crashing later. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the flavors you love, or be bold and try something new in store and online at 5hourenergy.com or at Amazon today. Let's take a good look at this Cubs squad here, because they are a team that right now they are going to be hosting a team, and they'll probably be hosting a flawed Padres team who could certainly could have bursts of brilliance in them, but they could also fall on their face, or they could be hosting the Mets, which would be a dream come true for them. Other teams on the outside looking in. We'll talk about one of them right now, but on the third segment here. But the Cubbies, look, they have Pete Crow-Armstrong, who's darn good. Michael Busch has been contributing some big-time hits. You're going to see Ian Happ has been one to come up with some big hits, including today. They are now, they're behind. They're behind the Milwaukee Brewers, and they won the season series, but the chances of them catching in Milwaukee are virtually nothing. Now, pitching. They have 2 pretty darn good pitchers at the top of their rotation. So if they were to play, let's just say they'll play right now, they play San Diego. They would start Matthew Boyd or Cade Horton, who both have come up. Boyd was an all-star, and he's coming back to earth a little bit. Cade Horton's pitched really, really well. Now, who's the other? If it goes to a third, who will that third one be? It could be, Tyone, Assad. They recently acquired Aaron Ciavalli, but I like having Cade Horton and having Boyd starting off the postseason for them. The wild card in here, within the wild card is Tucker. Now Tucker is still on the injured list, and they need to have him back. Now there are reports that he may be back. There are reports that he may be able to go half speed. I don't know, and neither do you. Suzuki can still hit for power. Crow-Armstrong can obviously hit for power. Tucker was not having one of his superstar years, but still had decent home runs, still a pretty darn good OPS. And to remove that Jenga piece from this lineup is pretty darn costly for the Cubs. They have a few other injuries on their roster right now, but you take a look and I take a look at this lineup, and they do have some young players, and Ballesteros played well the other day and did well today, and with a rotation being pretty solid, some holes in their bullpen, and a pretty good lineup, I think they would match up well against San Diego. I do. I think their starting pitcher will match up well against San Diego, and they'll be at home. In all probability, they'll be at home. The Cubs have been kind of laying in the weeds a little bit. They haven't had the attention that Milwaukee has had because of Milwaukee jumping to the front of the line. They don't have the superstar power of Philadelphia. They don't have the people looking at, oh, it's not fair of all the huge payroll they had that LA has, and the brashness of San Diego, and the weird up and down season of the Mets. Of all the playoff teams, this Cubs team is probably the most anonymous, which is really weird because of the freaking Cubs. But here we are. And they're the exact type of team that could come out and punch a team in the mouth that you're not expecting. And with that, I do think they could be a pretty darn dangerous team. Now, do I think they're going to go to the league championship series? I think they have a shot. Absolutely have a shot, especially if they line up well with LA. We have seen LA play a situation where they, how do I put this delicately? We've seen LA not pitch well in big moments. Now, the two teams that are going to be missing the wild card series will all probably be Philadelphia and Milwaukee. And the way it's lined up now, they play Philadelphia. I think Philly would be really, really a hard team to beat in a short series. But we'll see. If Boyd matches up well with Sanchez, you remember that Phillies have been playing really, really well, but they still are not going to have their ace. That if they had Wheeler, I think the Phillies might run the table. But the Cubs are going to be a team that I think will get to the division series, and then you take their chances. They don't have a lot to lose. They're going to probably win 90-some-odd game, be a legit playoff team, be a very good team. They'll probably finish with a better record than LA, but we'll see. A team that's just on the outside looking into the playoffs right now and must be kicking themselves big time is Arizona. Brandon Pfaadt, basically, who took a no-hitter into the sixth inning and pitched basically a complete game shutout. Pitched 9 innings, no runs. There you go. And with the Mets losing again to San Diego, the Diamondbacks were knocking on basically being on the verge of a playoff spot. But here's the deal. Justin Verlander apparently went swimming in that swimming pool from Cocoon and found his youth again and match fought inning for inning. It went into extras. The Giants unloaded with a 5-run inning. It was either in the 11th or 12th inning. Forgive me, I don't have the score right in front of me. And with that, the Giants are back to 500. The Diamondbacks they're now one game above 500. If they had scored 1 run in the first 9 innings, the D-backs would be half a game behind the Mets. Half a game. And they're idle tomorrow. And with the Mets playing and probably going to lose to San Diego, the D-backs could have been in a situation where they would be looking at going into a playoff spot going into this weekend. Now, as it stands, the D-backs have played pretty darn well. As it stands, they're 9-6 in September after having a winning August. But you look back and you see that dreadful July that they had. If they were merely a 500 team in July, then the D-backs will be back there in the postseason. And here's the other weird thing. Last year, they won 80-something games, and because they were in a tie with Atlanta and New York at the end of the year, they had to wait for those two teams to beat each other up, and they missed the postseason, despite being better than the team that went to the World Series in 2023. If they had won 1 game last year more than they did, and 2 more games this year than they did, then you may be looking at the D-backs going to the playoffs 3 straight years with a pennant in there. And what you're going to look back on right now? Remember they went to Colorado and they dropped 3 out of 4 to the Rockies. They're going to look back at those games. And they didn't think about it much then because they still had a losing record. They're kind of out of it. And you drop 3 out of 4 of the Rockies, guys are like, who cares? They dropped 2 out of 3 to the Pirates in July. Those are the games, no matter what part of the year it is. You can't look at them like, it doesn't matter. Those are all coming back to haunt the Diamondbacks. Right there. Pick up 2 games. 1 against the Pirates, 1 against the Rocks. You can still lose those series. And here we go. Oh, and by the way, score 1 run for poor Brandon Pfaadt, who came in there and basically pitched one of the games of his life. And what did you do? You gave him a big fat pile of nothing. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, and get smart categorization for your spending. And finally, feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. And you can maximize your investments. You can increase your savings rate, easily reviewing the finances with your partner or your financial advisor, and you can keep a great, clear view of your financial health from week to week and long term. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDON MLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with your code LOCKEDON. Say it with me, MLB. It's funny that the Red Sox won in extra innings against Sacramento today. Sacramento, as I said the other day, are tougher than you think. And Texas was put Jacob deGrom on the mound, and he did not pitch particularly well. And the Astros wound up winning that game. And the team that is on the outside, just barely looking in on the American League wild card, seems to keep changing every day. And now, thanks to a 6-game winning streak and winning 9 of their last 10 games, the Cleveland Guardians are only 2 games back in the loss column of both the Red Sox and the Seattle Mariners and the Houston Astros. And actually only 4 games back in the loss column of the Yankees. But I digress. The Yankees won today, and the Yankees are going to be one of the wild card teams. They're not going to drop. They're not going to drop 3 games. They're not going to let the Cleveland Guardians catch up to them. But right now, the Guardians are kind of hanging around. They're on a fantastic winning streak right now, and I just can't help but think about the same thing as I did with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Remember in mid-August? Around mid-August, when everything was going wrong for the Yankees, it was just collapsing. All of their acquisitions were turning into, their trade deadline was an absolute dud, and they went on a winning streak. And by August 9th, they were half a game behind the New York Yankees. And it really looked like at any moment the Guardians were going to leapfrog the Yankees, and Yankee fans were just going to be in absolute disarray. And then the Guardians went what was it? They went 6 they went 6-10 in a stretch, and they wound up losing went 6-10. They went on a 6-game losing streak to Arizona, to Texas, to Tampa Bay. They got swept by the Braves, and everything seemed to fall apart. The wheels on the bus fell apart. Now, since August 25th, they fell to 2 games under 500. And since then, they've only lost 5 games, and they've won 4. They've been 14-5 since then, and now 15-5. So they've won 15 of their next 20 games and have climbed back into it, including holding their own with the Detroit Tigers and showing the Tigers are vulnerable. The American League is just going to be an absolute free-for-all in this postseason. It's just going to be whoever's hot for a couple of weeks. The Tigers looked invincible when they were playing the Yankees, and now they're on the verge of getting swept by Cleveland. I don't understand it, neither do you. But a couple of those games, I keep thinking when you have those moments, because they had some stretches. They had a losing record in June. They didn't get out of the gate necessarily that strongly. And then they stumbled out of the gate, losing 6 of their first 9 games. Then they went on a great run to finish up April. But just try to prevent long-term stretches. They had a lousy June going into early July. And then they went on a great winning streak. Then they got on a great losing streak. And a little game here, a little game there. But that's the beauty of September baseball, because all anyone's going to remember is who makes it at the end. They won't remember anything about the roller coaster ride. Now, tomorrow, we have a bunch of games. The Guardians and the Tigers. The Guardians, if they want to stay in this, they have to beat Terrence Skubal. Bybee is pitching for Cleveland. It's pretty much who you want it to be. The Mets, if they don't want Arizona to climb back into it, have to hand the ball to Tong to beat Vasquez and the Padres. The Blue Jays, if they want to continue moving closer and closer to clinching that American League East, have to get a win from Bassett over Baz. Bassett in Tampa Bay. A day game, an outdoor day game in Tampa Bay. Bello is pitching for the Red Sox against Ginn and the Sacramento A's. We're going to see what happens there. Castillo, hand him the ball because the Mariners want to get back in first place. Lots of day games being played tomorrow. And then later, the Cubs, who should just basically rest everyone for the next couple of days. They'll be playing the Reds, who have played themselves out of it. And Fried is pitching for the Yankees. Fried has a chance for his 18th win. Fried has an outside chance at 20 wins. I know we're not supposed to care about wins anymore. And if he has 19 wins and the Yankees are on their final day of the season, obviously you're not going to pitch Fried. But he's having a great year. He's not going to win the Cy Young. He's having a great year. And Priester's been one of the best pickups in baseball, and he has a chance to move the Brewers closer and closer to their best record in franchise history. And Webb and Yamamoto, Giants-Dodgers start tomorrow. The Giants are trying to hold on, and the Dodgers are trying to show their supremacy. So let's talk about the trivia question. Jose Ramirez, great player, tied, I believe it was today or yesterday, tied what Hall of Famer for most plate appearances in Cleveland Major League Baseball history, whether they're called the Blues, the Napoleons, the Naps, the Indians, or the Guardians. Jose Ramirez and this Hall of Famer have the most plate appearances in franchise history. Put your answer right down below there. And by the way, thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen. For your second listen, find the all-night Locked On MLB game night, every game, every night until World Series champ is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB game night on Locked On MLB wherever you listen to your podcasts. Talking about the Cubs, who snuck on in and may be, well, more dangerous than people think, and how the Diamondbacks and the Cleveland Guardians may be kicking themselves for a loss here and a loss there that are haunting them at the end of the year. This has been Locked On MLB. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.